Hi everyone, welcome to the Glasgow Clubbing podcast. My name is Soban.
My name's Nick.
And welcome to episode 5. Our guest today has been DJing for over 40 years. Originating from Manchester, he moved up to Scotland and has been involved in so many parties throughout the 80s, 90s and up until the present day. He has been seen and called the John Peel of dance music. Please welcome Yogi Haughton to the podcast. Yogi, welcome to the Glasgow Clubbing podcast.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here. Thanks.
We are too. Yogi, so just to kind of start off, right, can you please just tell us, obviously you're from Manchester.
Yeah.
Can you please tell us a bit about where you grew up and how you first got into music? What was your first experiences?
At first, I started dating this girl that I met at Altrincham Ice. I've told this story before, by the way, but it's funny. She was skating around, and I thought I'd seen her on the telly about a documentary about a village in Manchester. So I went after her skating around the ice rink, caught up with her, started chatting to her, and she's like, "No, I wasn't on the fucking telly." And she was from this satellite town called Partington in Manchester. And it was like just surrounded by petrochemical works, nothing happening there, right shithole. Anyway, we went out one night to the local community centre and everybody was jumping about, diving about. I'm like, what the fuck are this lot doing? Well, that was my first introduction to Northern Soul because everyone in that town was into Northern.
Yeah.
They were all off the tights. I'd never taken any drugs. I was a good lad, a good, clean living lad back then. And they were all saying, "You need to come to Wigan, you need to come to Wigan." Anyway, this went on and on at the youth club. A few weeks later, I'm at a party in Stretford and I got drunk. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to go to that fucking Wigan casino because I knew they'd all be there. They're partying a lot. I thumbed it to Wigan. I think I must have already I must have applied for the membership because you had to be a member to get into Wigan.
Yeah.
And I walked into Wigan Casino and at that moment, I felt like I'd arrived in heaven. I knew that my life was going to change.
Yeah.
Can you just as the doors opened and the sweat and the heat hit you, you know, there's 1,500 people dancing in front of you, massive balcony. Everyone's off the tights on drugs. That was probably the first time I took drugs as well at Wigan.
What was it then? I mean, was it speed or?
Yeah, Wigan was funny because it was Bombers, Red and Browns, Green and Clears,
Proper old school.
Juramin, Jurafet, Tenuate Dospan, Apposite. But there was an underlying current at Wigan which was quite dark. Everyone started taking barbiturates to come down on, and people were falling about everywhere. And then, of course, all the opioids like Diconol, dipypinol hydrochloride, and Physetone. All kinds of drugs were being taken at Wigan. It was just a den of debauchery.
Can you tell us, I mean, for a lot of people who don't know what the Wigan Casino was like, can you kind of go into a bit of detail? Just tell me what Wigan Casino was like, because I don't know much about it.
So everybody that was there had literally travelled from all over the country. I'm getting goose pimples, look. It was the real spirit of what you and I know what clubbing's about, which we'll come on to later, because a lot of people got involved later on that didn't understand the spirit of clubbing.
Yeah.
So we were all going to this one club. It was unity. It was all the cliches. Everyone's there for the music and the drugs. And they literally came from the four corners of Britain and Ireland.
And the music being ultra rare.
Northern soul,
soul music that was really made in the sort of late 60s, early 70s.
Early 60s, early 70s, late 70s.
Yeah.
Towards the end, they did start playing some newer stuff like the Originals, Down to Love Town, Keys to the City, Omni, what we now class as modern soul. So it was just moving along before the council shut the place down.
Yeah.
So.
And when is this? Let's just, what year would this be?
I started going round about 1976.
1976?
Yeah. How old are you?
Minus
I was 4.
4.
Yeah.
So I was off my tights when you were doing more. So yeah. So 1976, I started going, but it opened in the early 70s, and then what happened? It's funny because what happened was there was a TV show called This England, and it was all about Wigan Casino. It was a famous director who's made loads of Hollywood movies now that made it. And that's when what were classed as the divs were parachuted into Wigan Casino. And we'll come on to this, but that's what happened after Acid House.
Raves,
it's
yeah.
exactly the same parallel.
Yeah, 100%.
People got into it that probably didn't really know about music or have a passion for music like you and I. They just parachuted in and did it because it was cool and it had been on Granada TV. So yeah, This England was a big turning point for Wigan Casino.
So a documentary was made about the club, and then it became much more popular. Is that what happened here?
Well, yeah, it was. This is when millions of people watch TV on a Saturday night, and this was a prime time documentary about Wigan Casino. So it shows all the dancing. Doesn't mention the drugs, funnily enough, but you can see everyone off the tights. It's on YouTube. It's called This England. So once that was on dinner time TV, Wigan just went mental. It was so busy. But like all good scenes, the original people, a lot of people were like, nah, fuck this, I'm off.
Moved on. Yeah.
As they do with every music genre. It's like rock and roll, rock and roll when all the black guys were making it, and then along came Elvis Presley and all the white guys imitating it.
Yeah.
There was probably people that were really into rock and roll that went, fuck that, that's fake, I'm off,
And Yogi, were you buying records at this point? Were you DJing?
No, I wasn't. I never really bought. I wish I had, because they used to have a record.
So I bet you did.
They used to have a record bar at Wigan, and there'd be like 100 people buying records, and some of the top dealers in the country selling records. Because you got to remember, that's the only way you could get these things. There was no internet.
People travelling over to America to actually buy.
Yeah, everyone was good. America was being raped every week by British people, because we were going to America. They didn't have a clue what these records were worth. So you'd buy a five grand, would cost you now a $5 record for $1, 50 cents, and they'd all be bringing them back. Now when you go to America, they've all got the computers and look up the price and go, that'll be $5,000.
Yeah.
So that's all been spoiled. But it also helps me as someone that buys records for selling on, because I can do that with rock and roll now, and the amount of records I must have left in America, rare rock and rare R&B and stuff like that, punk and stuff like that, because I didn't know anything about it. So it works both ways, but yeah, the Americans have so clicked onto it. And a lot of them collect now as well. They're out every day. Imagine living in America and going out every day looking for records.
So tell us then. So you were going to the Wigan Casino, right, and you were getting really inspired by the sounds that you were hearing, right?
Yeah.
The next stage is therefore then buying records and getting into DJing. So tell us how you started to kind of get into the whole into DJing.
I never bought records at Wigan because I was always off my tights, and I couldn't be asked carrying records about. Do you know what I mean? And carrying what would have been a £200 record then, or $5-6 grand now, just didn't compute in me. I'd be like, I'll break that. I can't afford to lose that kind of money. But my mate Maz in Manchester, we were all getting into modern soul, and we were already into disco. I was really moving quickly with the music. I'd go spinning after Wigan Casino, which was the main jazz funk shop in Manchester. So I'd come out of Wigan, and then I'd go to spinning, and I'd buy jazz funk and fusion and jazz albums. And Maz was into that as well. So we kind of were parallel musically, and he asked me if I wanted to DJ. He was going, I'm going to put a fucking club on. I was like, right, okay. Will you DJ? And I remember I must have only had that many records at home. I mean, you see my record collection now.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll play some records. So I went along, and there was maybe about 30 or 40 people there. The thing about Manchester was, I never, ever, and I still to this day don't consider myself a DJ. I know it seems a bit strange looking at all
Does have that.
I'm a record collector.
Yeah.
That people ask me to play my records, or digital even now. So, but no, I just kind of fell into it. I was like, yeah, I'll play these records, and Manchester was so rife with big DJs. I mean, Colin Curtis, Kev Edwards, Greg Wilson, who's made the greatest comeback of all time. So the thought with this amount of records of breaking into that scene, I'm sure young people today that want to DJ can relate to that. People say to me all the time, how do you start DJing? I don't know the formula, if there is a formula at all.
Yeah.
I just fell into it.
Yeah.
Will you come and play your records? Yeah, I will. And that's how it all started at this club in Manchester with Maz. And I didn't really do much around Manchester because I never considered myself a DJ. It wasn't until I started seeing a girl that I met at Wigan in Edinburgh, and that's where things really started to.
So what happened there then, Yogi?
Well, I met a girl at Wigan who I've got a kid to actually, Denise, and used to come up to see Denise, and funnily enough, I'd go to spinning before I'd come up to Edinburgh with a bag of records that I'd just bought.
What year was this, Yogi?
Oh, this would be 84,
Right.
85 at the latest. It must be 84, 83, 84.
Okay.
So then I started going to this club called Manifesto, which had the Scars frontman, Rab, who was the DJ. And he was obsessed with P-Funk and stuff. And that's all they used to play. So I was coming up from Manchester, like the greatest city in the northwest for music. Coming up here and hearing saying George Clinton and Bootsy Collins records, and I literally said to him, these are all new imports, play them. So he'd start playing my records. Anyway, every couple of weeks I was coming up to Edinburgh, giving Rab the records. And then they were like, why don't you play them? And that was it. I got the bug. I was off and running, you know.
So what was that club and where was it?
It was in Annabelle's at Toll Cross.
Toll Cross, yeah.
It was a Sunday night and it was packed. It was all the hairdressers.
Yeah.
So they were all off on a Monday.
Yeah.
Full of fit birds, full of dandy guys all dressed up and everything. Red stripe, schlitz, flowing everywhere.
Proper 80s.
Yeah, so it was proper 80s. It was the it crowd of Edinburgh.
Yeah.
So what Colin tapped into over here.
Absolutely.
And it was run by the Fire Engines.
The band, yeah.
The band, who then went on to be called Win, who did all the adverts for...
McEwen's.
Was it
Like McEwen's
Tennent's?
Lager.
Was it McEwen's?
Can't remember.
One of those crap
We can
beers
find
anyway.
that out.
So, yeah, they all ran it. And, of course, everyone wanted to be around Win and the Fire Engines. And I remember a lot of Edinburgh pop stars would go there, you know, music makers. James Locke from the Chimes, for instance.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was the place to be.
So then, what sort of music were you playing then?
Well, I was playing all jazz funk stuff. It was all the new release jazz funk.
Yeah.
With things like Oneness of Juju,
Yeah.
Walking on Sunshine, things like that. All the new releases of the day.
Yeah. And there would have been nobody playing that, really, because, I mean, you had access to the shops in Manchester that were getting it in.
Yeah, but unbeknown to me, people like Bob Jeffries over here, and Bob's got to get his props because Bob, I don't know
I'm
another
sure we'll get him on.
Yeah, I don't know another DJ that's played at more gigs than Bob Jeffries.
Yeah.
He's played at all of them. Bob Jeffries over here, Kenny Mack, who used to, I think he ran the Stonehaven All Dayers.
Yeah.
And then you've got Tony Cochran. You must know Tony.
Can't think.
No,
Tony.
Tony used to run everything in Dundee.
Uh-huh.
And Stirling, Distills all dayers. I played for him with Chaka Khan actually at a big all dayer, which was mental. So yeah, they were all doing their jazz funk thing as well. And I was in Edinburgh, and I didn't really know many people in Edinburgh back then, you know. So yeah, I thought I was probably the only person with this, but there will have been other people.
See, Yogi, so you hadn't, so this was 1984, right? You say you hadn't moved to Edinburgh just yet. You were coming back
backwards and forwards,
right?
yeah.
And how long did you do that for? I mean, were you playing in Manchester also, and when did you then move to Edinburgh?
Well, no, what happened was, funnily enough, Denise moved down to Manchester. And we were living on Salford Precinct in this shithole of a high-rise. I mean, proper, you know, we had nothing. We had no wallpaper. We had one couch. And she moved down there. And we were out 5 nights a week. We were going everywhere, all over the country, to jazz funk things, northern things. And then she freaked out on drugs and came back up the road.
Oh, Jesus.
And of course I followed her. So that's how I ended up coming up here.
So Manchester was what?
It was too much for her. Too much, yeah. She couldn't handle going out 5 nights a week.
Before we leave Manchester, right, and move to Edinburgh, we can not talk about the Hacienda before we go to Edinburgh. Can you maybe just, I mean, what was...
So there is something, right, so there's the video of and it's taken in Salford. I think a guy called Gerald posted it.
Right,
which is showing a club in Salford and they're playing No Way Back. But, and I think it's 1986.
Right.
But there's sort of dance
I was
troops.
up here by then.
It's a very black club, like, you know.
Was it the Reno?
I'm not sure. But I mean, was house music starting to come into Manchester by then?
Yeah, it was, 1986. It was well and truly starting. It was all that proto house. I mean, it's like this flyer here. I mean, this is Texas. This is probably 1986, 87 as well. And we've got house records, Serious Intentions, Serious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a proto house record.
Yeah, absolutely.
We were playing that at Texas when I first moved up here. So, yeah, it was really starting to happen, 86, 87.
So was that the first club that you started in Edinburgh then?
No, that was a club called the Black and White, which was in the Laughing Duck downstairs, which was a gay bar.
Yeah.
And in my wisdom, I thought I could run a straight night there.
The opposite. Colin Barr thought that as well.
Yeah. So it was all my mates that went, and we were playing soul and jazz funk and everything. So that was the first club. That was probably the first big night that I was under the spotlight kind of thing. Well, I was doing Manifesto, that obviously, but that's the first one I had a hand in, I would say, properly.
Yeah.
Big one. And that blew up. That was massive.
And I mean, what sort of numbers were you getting to that? What
well,
size
the
of club was
all-nighters,
it?
we were getting 900.
So these are all-nighters starting?
No, it was a Saturday, every Saturday, and we did all-nighters every now and again.
Yeah.
I mean, this is very early stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
Well, a lot of that is Paradise Garage stuff.
I mean, what's this here, Texas 10 to go? I mean, is this like just a list of 10 tunes
Do you
on
know-
the fly on what?
Well, what happened was, when I moved to Edinburgh, I was like, there's so much not being done here that gets done in Manchester. And all the clubs back in the day in Manchester, all over the country, would do these things.
Yeah.
Top records.
Top records that the DJs were playing, because again, there's no internet. And then there'd be a little blurb about what the DJs have been up to, where they're playing next. So it was a way to advertise stuff. So here we are, Wigan Pier, Legends, The Exit, the Bowling Green, that was a great club. And then they'd talk about... Yeah, so far as... I think this is... I've only just noticed this. This is Greg Wilson talking about being on the tube... doing the first ever live mix.
That's right. I mean, that's on YouTube, actually, him
it is,
doing the first mix.
I've only just noticed that.
What's this?
It's Greg Wilson. He was on the Tube on Channel 4, I think. And he's got a set of techniques, and he's showing...
Tube? You mean like...
Showing you how to mix.
No, the programme, the Tube.
Right, okay.
But actually showing how to mix, and it was the first time the British youth had seen properly how to, how people were mixing with techniques.
And that's it mentioned there, which I didn't realise.
I mean, Greg Wilson plays regularly for Melting Pot,
Exactly.
and as you say, what a comeback he's made.
Unbelievable. I mean, that is what, is there a year on the top?
1983.
1983, and I've got other ones from 1981. And Greg Wilson was a top DJ back then.
Yeah.
I mean, I was travelling about everywhere, go to see Greg and Colin Curtis. And that comeback, which we can maybe talk about.
Yeah.
Fucking 42 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to Greg and I was like, where the fuck did you go? I think
Maybe he had kids,
Well,
it disappeared for a few years.
But the funny thing is, the man chose when he was coming back.
Yeah.
And he just came back, walked in through that door like it had never been closed. It's unbelievable. Not a lot of DJs could do that,
Okay, so can you so you told me that you started to work in a place called at Move Records. Can you
Yeah, that was about 1985 as
1985.
well.
So that's when you pretty much moved to Edinburgh.
When I pretty much moved up here. Denise was working there as well.
Right.
We all worked for free, never got paid a penny. It was a little independent label, and what was happening was we were licensing what essentially would be called modern soul. So stuff like Sam Dees, Oliver Cheatham records, obscure records. So, and we'd license them and put them out. It was one of the first independent soul labels in Britain, actually. So it was run by a guy called Alan Omakoji, who used to be quite high up at Motown, but he got sacked. Nobody knows why he got sacked to this day. But he never paid us a penny. I remember he came in. It's a funny story. This. He came in one day and was like, we're going to have a Christmas party. This is how tight he was. It's like, right, okay. I'm thinking, great, we're going to get some drugs, free drink. He went, here's a tenner. Go to the supermarket and get some pop and crisps. And that's what we got for a year's work. So, yeah.
But the music, but from when would you say, how long did you work there, and when did you start seeing the sort of first house records starting to come in?
I would say 1986.
Yeah.
It was the start of the,
I mean, that's when they were made.
yeah. And this is what I said to you the other night on the phone, right? I wasn't parachuted into the house music scene. I just grew organically with it.
Yeah.
So I was listening to things like Willie Cole on Set Fire to Me, and I was going, that's a really interesting record. Now, looking back, it was a house record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like records like Imagination Burning Up.
Yeah.
The which is I mean, I think that's 1981, 1983. I forget, but I mean, you listen to that; it's got the house piano on it and everything.
There's many records like that, and they just stood out to me as something a bit different.
Yeah.
I didn't go, oh, that's a house
That's
record.
different.
That's a house
Well,
record.
it didn't stand out then because I guess they were made by Black America, particularly Chicago, but they went along with the other tracks that were getting imported at that time.
Yeah, I mean, can I just get here we are. I mean, there's Serious Intention.
Yeah.
Which is a Paradise Garage record.
Yeah.
And it's getting played next to the Beastie Boys.
What Beastie Boys track?
Hold It Now.
A classic.
Janet Jackson, What Have You Done For Me Lately?
Another classic.
Patty Austin, Heat of Heat, The Winans, SOS Band, The Finest.
Yeah.
So we were dropping these records in proto-house records, and we didn't even know they were house. I just thought it was another soul record.
And of course, I mean, as been said, there wasn't enough house records to play, which...
Exactly. You couldn't do a full house set.
And part of that, with modern clubbing, certainly, from talking on these interviews, is I think the thought would be that it was all, you know, like house music, and it wasn't, because there wasn't enough tracks. I mean, there was a lot of hip hop played as well, you know.
Yeah. I mean, this is an interesting chart here. This is 1985. There it is, the receipt at the top, as you call it.
Yeah.
And it's Inner Life.
Yeah.
Which now, you know, all this gets played these days. Gloria D. Brown, The More They Knock. These are all old Paradise Garage records, you know. Kim Hurt, Do You Want to Dance With Me? Clear. So, yeah, it was mainly soul and funk, but we were playing house and didn't know it.
Yeah.
Yogi, were you going over to America at that time by any chance? Or did you manage to get a chance to go over?
I think I first went to America around about 1986, yeah.
And where did you go? I mean, did you go...
First time I went, we were landed in New York, obviously, and I think I just did my digging there around New York. The second time I went...
Did you go to any clubs when you were there?
Yeah, me and Jippy went to the Tunnel. The Tunnel.
Really?
Yeah, with Junior Vasquez DJing.
So that's Jimpy Simpson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jimpy Simpson, we went to the Tunnel, and it was mental. Because what happened was, we walked in... Did you ever go to the Tunnel?
No, unfortunately not.
Right. It was literally a tunnel in a train tunnel. And there was the platforms. And I'm not joking. When we walked, we were in the queue, actually. I just remembered. We were in the queue, and it was, as you can imagine, right down the road. And me and Jimpy are talking. Jimpy's, hey, fucking hell, come on, in. And I'm talking to him in Manchester accent. And there's a picker coming along as you go back then. And he heard us. He went, "Where you from?" I went, "Manchester." He went, "So am I. Come here." And he took us, he took us right in the club.
Brilliant.
Didn't have to pay or anything. And when we walked in, they were playing an a cappella of "Keep On Moving."
Amazing.
Oh my God. You can imagine.
Yeah.
Everyone just hundreds of black folk dancing along to it and singing along to the a cappella.
Brilliant.
And I just stood there. I was like, oh my days. And,
amazing.
I think Jimpy snuck off to Mars as well. I didn't go to Mars. Jimpy went to Mars club.
So that was David Morales' club?
I think so,
He was the resident there. I think it was, because he did the Red...
I mean, what were these clubs... Can you just go into detail what these clubs were like? Because see, when you see like New York and, you know, documentaries and whatnot in the 80s and what clubs were like in the 80s, you know...
Primarily gay clubs, Yogi.
They were predominantly gay.
Gay, black and
predominantly
Hispanic.
Black, Hispanic. It was the real deal.
I mean, was it glittery? Was it shiny? Was it dark?
No,
was it low lit? Dark, yeah.
The tunnel wasn't glitzy at all. As I said, there was 2 platforms and a dance floor in the middle, and it wasn't glitzy at all. And you know, everything Madonna loved about New York back then, it was. Do you know what I mean? So, and coming from where I came from, to see all these gay folk just letting their hair down, and it was completely different, because the clubs I went to in Manchester were predominantly black. I'd be one of like 10 white guys there. To go there and see predominantly gay folk as well, which I'd never been around, you know, it was just, and I just absorb, you know, I just eat that shit up. Life experiences. That's why I do what I do today.
Of course, absolutely.
I just ate it up, and I was like, just stood there going, oh my, and I used to dance then. So I was obviously dancing. So yeah, it was everything you've ever read about.
Speaking about the dancing, actually, sorry, did you get into the Northern Soul
I used to
and dance
all night. Every night. 5 nights a week I was out dancing, and going to jazz funk clubs and dancing, which was obviously a different kind of dancing.
So how did you see then, so you're in Edinburgh, the first sort of house records are starting to come through. How did you see the scene start to progress then from there?
Well, I just kept doing what I was doing. I was putting on these all-nighters and everything. And then obviously as the house...
Or how did you progress the scene, I should have said?
And then obviously I was just eating up this new music, and of course when the bleep sound happened,
Oh man.
there you go. This is an interesting one here. This is an interesting.
So
flyer.
what Yogi's talking about is
what's that?
well, so it's Sheffield Bleep. I mean, it was called Sheffield Bleep, but it was
Leeds Bradford.
Leeds Bradford. It was bass, heavy bass, and bleep records. Now
It was a very black sound.
very black sound.
Mixed in with a bit of techno.
Yep. So I mean, I would have said that it had a big influence on, like, I mean, it would a big influence on drum and bass. I would have said.
Would it be fair to say that it was
The first.
English version of techno as well?
Yeah.
We were hearing the Detroit techno,
Yeah.
and then
I guess that's what it was. It was.
I'm asking the questions
I know, but it was techno. The Detroit techno records basically regurgitated back by Black Britain, you know, which was primarily in the north. So there was these incredible tracks came out, you know, like Unique 3, the theme, Ital Rockers.
Wait for the bass, Ital Rockers, yeah.
So all these sort of tracks.
So going back to this flyer here, you can see there, right at the bottom, who's that?
Yeah.
Nightmares on Wax.
Nightmares on Wax.
The very first time in Scotland.
So what year was that?
1989, I
89.
brought them up.
Wow.
And look here as well, Simon Dunmore making his Scottish debut, who went on to be one of the biggest house record executives in the country. So he did his first spot at the Hoochie. And, as I've told you, Fatboy Slim did his first ever Scottish gig.
How much do you do it for?
150 quid.
150 quid for Fatboy Slim?
Yeah, and then the next night we had him on in Motherwell.
So, right, we'll move it on to sort of talk about going into house music. So, obviously you're in Edinburgh, you're starting to do all-nighters, bringing up all these DJs from across Britain who have now, you know, are legendary, you know, within the scene.
Yeah.
So what started to happen? What did you see with, because you're in the East, but what was happening in the West as well, and how did you cross over there?
Well, obviously Jimpy was, and Frank Devine.
Frank Devine from Hamilton.
Yeah, started the Garion. And that was a pivotal moment in house music.
So the Garions in Motherwell.
Garion's in Motherwell, an old hotel.
Yeah.
Sunday night, and it was absolutely rammed. And again, it was the same format. Me, Frank, and Jimpy were all soul fans. Blackpool Mecca, which is kind of modern soul kind of stuff. And we were just open-minded musically.
Yeah.
And the Garion, we started playing house there. I think there's a flyer here for Twin Ape playing at the Garion.
Yeah.
You know, that's hip house.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? So one minute we were playing a rare modern soul track. And as you know, Nick, back then nobody was blinkered musically.
No,
it wasn't
absolutely not.
it's a techno night, it's a drum and bass night, it's a garage night. It was just music.
Yeah, and there was people travelling from all over the country to go to, and this is a thing that people, you know, the younger generation would find strange. But you know, these clubs in Motherwell will probably go on to the one in Bellshill as well.
Yeah.
But they were absolute centres. I mean, we've kind of missed out Allerton, which is next to Shotts as well. But people travelled from all over the country.
Well, this is the thing. This is pre-dance music explosion, right? Before everyone was parachuted in.
Mm-hmm.
Little known to us, there was little pockets of people all over the country into the music.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I used to take 2 coaches down to Unique Three's club, the Sound Yard in Bradford, where I played. They'd bring a coach up to the Hoochie Coochie or the Garion.
Yeah.
So we were all migrating. It's the only way you could hear the music. It wasn't like today where you can go out in Glasgow and you're spoilt for choice.
Yeah.
You literally had to go, where are we going to go in 4 weeks' time?
And one of the things was there was a resistance in the cities, and certainly in Glasgow, you know, as some of the previous guests have said, you know, not all the places were taking them. So a lot of the places were outside of the cities, you know, that became
Yeah, they hated it. Listen, there's always been this prejudice against dance music.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the clubs in Manchester were Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. They take the Black Pound Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and on a Friday and Saturday,
They wouldn't let them in.
they wouldn't let them in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And all the big clubs I went to, Legends, Berlin, Tuesdays and Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah.
I mean, Yogi, see, this is 1989, right? See when Ecstasy hit, right?
Yeah.
Clubbing. Did that, obviously, that had an impact in terms of how the music was played?
And what year would that? When did you first see that appear? Then
Ecstasy. It's funny because
That changed a lot, didn't it? I mean, that
did they have?
it did.
or
yeah.
full.
Well, we've jumped ahead a little bit here because
Have we?
we jumped quite ahead, yeah, because there was all the sub clubs shit starting. Because don't forget the sub club was also soul and disco.
Yeah.
And Nick Peacock, by the way, he knows inside out what happened.
Oh, he'll be coming on soon, don't worry.
Yeah, you've got to get him on because his memory is unbelievable. But yeah, I'm looking here. I was talking to Alan that used to DJ at the sub club in the early days.
So you said he was the first?
He was the first DJ.
So this is when the sub club the sub club was the club which moved about and eventually moved.
So what happened was it moved about. You had Sam Piagentini and Alan in Edinburgh, and you had Graham Wilson in Glasgow.
Yeah.
And they teamed together. They merged together as one.
The sub club as a club.
The sub club and the Hooch.
And the Hooch.
Because I didn't run the Hooch to start with.
Right.
Alan Campbell and Sam did.
Right. And Alan Campbell was the one which played the first track
record at the sub club.
at the sub club,
Yeah.
as the club named the sub
Do
club.
you remember what it was? Out of interest.
So I'll have to go back to these notes here. So, Valentino's in Edinburgh was where Sam and Alan were running the Hoochie. That was all Echo and the Bunnymen, The Cure. The Hooch and Sub Club merged in 1986. Okay?
What do you mean merged? I mean, what do you mean by this?
They became one business.
Right.
So Graham would look after the sub club over here.
Right.
And Alan and Sam would do
It's the first time I've ever heard that.
Yeah.
It's news to me.
Right.
And it's news to you.
Well, yeah. I mean, so what? So let's just get this clear, right? So
Mardi Gras is where the sub club used to be, apparently.
Right, the Mardi Gras in Glasgow.
Yeah.
Right, so the Mardi Gras was down at the Clydeside.
right, and that's where the sub club the night was,
Well, yeah,
right?
it was in the-
And you had Lucifer's, which was in Jamaica Street,
Yes.
right?
And then you had Jamaica Inn, which is Lucifer's as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
So Graham discovered it's all really complicated.
Well, yeah, it's just like I just walk there every weekend. I mean, for 15 nights a week. It's just very interesting to hear a lot more detail
Yeah.
about the space I'm in.
Absolutely.
15 nights a week.
So
Absolutely.
Alan and Sam, Graham got in touch with them and said, I found this venue. This is going to be where we're moving the sub club to. And that's where it is
No.
today. Of course, Walter Morris owned the building,
Yeah.
the late, great Walter.
Yeah.
And Graham designed the logo, which is still used.
Really?
Graham was at art college. He designed the sub club logo.
Oh.
So it's the same logo as today.
So this is 1987 then.
1981, according to Graham Wilson, found the space in 1981.
81, but it became the sub club 1987.
No, I think it was 1981. It was called the Sub Club, according to what I've learnt.
No, it was the sub club became the sub club 1987. No?
No, it was the club moved about.
Right. Oh, the club night was formed in 1981.
It says here, Graham Wilson found the space in 1981. Whether it started in 1981, maybe took him a year or two to get it off the ground.
Anyway.
So here we go. Look at this. This is interesting. Did you know Frankie Goes to Hollywood played at the Sub Club?
Shut up.
Come on.
Telling you, look. Frankie Goes to Hollywood PA'd at the sub club.
When?
I don't know.
Must-
You'll have to ask.
Well, that could only have been 1984, 85.
Something like that.
Something like that.
But it was called Lucifer's then, though.
No, but this is it. He's talking about when the sub club was moving about.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because
The club night.
At the club night, before it actually...
I think this is in the actual sub club, though, according to Alan.
I think we need to check on this.
Anyway,
We do.
Anyway, we could be splitting hairs here, right?
Anyway.
It was in the 80s, so...
So then, this is interesting. ID Mag came to the sub club.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's when it really blew up
Yeah.
for the sub club as well.
Yeah.
And when it became really, really dressy and stylish.
Yeah.
Because I think prior to that, it was quite earthy and
Yeah. I mean, ID magazine was the coolest magazine.
yeah, the
going
face
through.
and ID
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah. So getting the blessing from ID Mag sent it into a different stratosphere. Of course, it was just soul and disco late after the Frankie Goes to Hollywood period. It was kind of soul and disco.
So when did you start playing? So you were one of the original residents at the sub club,
I
and
started
that when it was it still moving, Yogi, or was it?
No,
Was it?
it was the sub club.
It was actually in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the DJs were Nick and I think Harry. Oh, here's a name you might not know. Jerry McLaughlin. He was a resident when the sub club opened.
It's my mum's maiden name. Maybe a relation to me.
Maybe that's how you came
Maybe
about.
it is.
So Jerry McLaughlin was an original sub club DJ. Ewan Dale.
No, I can't.
Got to give these guys props.
Yeah,
do you know what I
totally.
mean? And,
Let's have it.
Nick Peacock was obviously there from
Yep.
the off.
Next to me on very soon, I can
So-
guarantee that.
I started in 1986. I was a bit late to the party.
Yeah.
Really.
Aye. And so you're DJing Edinburgh, Glasgow,
Yeah.
right?
Now, 1986 is when Jimpy walked in and heard me DJ. And he went, I'm going to start a club in Motherwell with Frank Devine
Yeah.
called Club 9.
Yeah.
And I
Legendary
want
club.
you to be the resident.
Yeah.
That's the first time I met Jimpy. I remember him pulling me aside and going, I'm Jimpy, who's a professional footballer. Has he finished football then? But anyway, he was a footballer that like going to proper clubs.
Yeah.
So yeah, he took me aside and that's how Club 9 was started.
So Club 9 started, was that in the Garion or was it in...
The Garion.
So that was in the Garion.
The Garion.
And then
Sunday nights.
when did it move to... Because it moved to the Hatton Rig.
in Bells Hill.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think it lasted a few years at the Garion and then maybe round about 1980, late 87, 88, it went to Bells Hill.
Yeah. I went to the Bells Hill one.
That was mental.
What were they
sorry.
like? I mean, can you just tell us what were they like? What did they look like?
Well, from my memory, it seemed, but the DJ box, it was kind of round, like in a semicircle, as I remember it, like, you know, but it was a long time ago. And everybody kind of stood in different areas. So there was like Glasgow and Motherwell, because it was all different towns,
Football
all
factions
travelled.
and everything. So that was still rife, the whole football thing.
I was want to get on to that because when Ecstasy came into play, right?
Well, this is where it all...
We're
getting there.
We're getting there, right?
We're getting there.
Right.
So, yeah, you're right. Bells Hill, the Hatton Rig. So there was as you came in, there was a stage to the right.
Yeah.
And then it was just like a long hall.
Yeah. Was it raised up?
It was raised, the stage,
Yeah.
It wasn't a massive stage.
Yeah.
No, I actually knocked one of the top Rangers boys out off the stage because he was trying to nick my records. I didn't have a clue it was.
It was a bit fruity at times, that place, at the car park.
Yeah. Well, I'll come to another story that night about the Hatton Rig when he got fruity. But I turned my back, because I used to have a box on that side of the box. Turn around and there's this Rangers guy going through my records, and I just went up and whacked him. Anyway, he scrambled off on his hands and knees, and I went looking for him.
Bet you had a lot of pals with him.
Well, Jimpy had to go and sort it out.
Yeah.
Because he said that's one of the top Rangers boys. So he had to go and speak to some Rangers lads to get it all sorted out. So I lived to tell the tale.
Yeah, yeah.
But he got a shiner.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but I mean, it was like that because at the time, you know, there was a youth movement within the casuals. Do you know what I mean? But there were a lot of them were into music. You know.
Well, this is what I'm saying about people. I grew into house very organically. Then the newspapers were talking about it.
Yeah.
It was on the 6 o'clock news, police moving on raves and stuff like that. And that's when all the masses got into it.
Yeah.
And that's when we started seeing casuals appearing.
Yeah.
And they weren't like us.
Yeah.
They weren't into the music the way we... Some of them got into it and some of them got it. And a lot of them didn't. I mean, Edinburgh was the worst.
Yeah.
They took forever to...
Twitch has touched on that, but I mean, you could give us your side of it as well, which would be interesting.
Well, this is where we get to the point with Ricky McGowan and Street Rave and everything. They quickly got into clubbing, right? And they dropped the whole casual thing.
Yeah, totally.
But not Edinburgh. They were coming through to wreck parties.
I remember.
through here. I mean, had someone else run the Hatton Rig and Club 9, things might have been very different because Jimpy's hard as nails.
Yeah.
I can remember him getting on a coach one night and going, right, he got on with someone else and went, right, the 2 top boys off the coach now, and not one stood up.
Yeah.
Because Jimpy's reputation was ferocious.
Yeah.
Well, that's how it was dealt with.
I mean, this is the thing, you know. I mean, one of the things is, I think what's lost.
So he said to the two top guys, right, off the bus. So
One of the 2 top boys off the bus with me and him now, and not one person got
One
off.
of the things that's lost, right, in all the stories from the past is that it was completely all peace and love. That isn't always the case, you know.
Yeah.
There was youth cultures clashing with this and moving into the acid house scene, and it was not all roses all the time.
But you know what? When you say about the group standing, they all did.
They did, yes.
But you know what? I think Street Rave was the first place where they all started to really amalgamate. And I remember Ricky saying he was coming through Edinburgh to meet such and such. I'm going, he's a Hibs boy. What are you doing? Going, oh, yeah, we've got to know each other. Oh, he's not so bad after all.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think Street Rave was the first thing to break down.
I mean, are you talking about Street Rave when it was at Air Pavilion? Well, that I would say that as well. You know, in Air Pavilion there was really no trouble at all. You know, and well, no, in fact, I take that back.
I remember seeing someone get stabbed with a sword.
I did as well. So.
But no, I'd spent my entire clubbing life travelling around the country and meeting new people, and that's what I loved about it.
Yeah.
And then here we are with the rave thing, and it's all fractured, and people from different towns. It was that gang mentality.
Yeah. So, are you saying then that
he's struggling with this?
No, it's quite a lot to take in. So, are you saying obviously with the media attention of like acid house and you know
it brought,
and all that kind of thing.
It brought the second wave in.
It took it to the masses, and what that did was dilute the crowd because you then had a fractured crowd all coming and a kind of generic kind of crowd in terms of not all there for the same reason.
Back in the day,
but these clubs were amazing as well.
They were so raw.
I mean, the Air Pavilion was literally unbelievable. I mean, it was a 12-hour rave. I mean, the records we're talking about, like Nightmares and Wax, LFO. All came up and played.
Hip hop and everything.
It was amazing, really was, and so eclectic as
well.
You know,
absolutely. Yeah. So all these gangs started to merge together, and then, I'll tell you what though. Do you remember Kronk?
In Dunfermline.
Yeah. the Edinburgh lot went through and wrecked that. Someone got a machete in the back of the head and everything. So Timsy was an old Dunfermline casual who'd got into house music and clubbing. And of course, this lot from Edinburgh were going anywhere and everywhere to wreck the party.
Yeah.
So I don't know why it took them so long to get it. Maybe they weren't getting good ecstasy.
Yeah.
I don't know. But yeah. So we were all these people were then inviting DJs from other towns. So that whole barrier had been broken down.
Yeah, of course. And people partying in different towns and cities and such like, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Travelling about. That's what I'd done my entire life. And then everyone else started doing it. Getting buses. I mean, you look at the bottom of is there any coaches at the bottom of that?
There was always numbers.
There was one with the like numbers and that for different parts of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what you used to do. People would bring coaches from all over the country.
So I mean, Club 9 was a very important club in terms of, I mean, you won, it was a Blues and Soul magazine.
Yeah, won Club of the Year 2 years on the bounce.
Which is quite incredible.
Yes.
Because this is in the late 80s and this is a club which was based in Bells Hill.
Yes.
And this is going against the full country and not just Scotland. By that we mean the full of the UK.
Well, this brings me to the whole thing about the three blokes that went to Ibiza to discover house music. All they had to do was get a fucking nationwide coach up to Edinburgh. We were doing it there. Do you know what I mean? Why did you go to Ibiza? It was happening. And that really pisses me off, that story about three guys went to Ibiza.
What's this?
You tell it, Nick.
Well, okay. So the story that the press always
It's
go
a
back...
London-centric
Yeah, it's a
story.
London-centric story is that three guys went to Ibiza, four guys went to Ibiza, you know, which they did, you know, which Paul Oakenfold and such like. Now,
Rampling and...
right, and they heard Alfredo and heard house music, ecstasy, and brought, you know, that scene
and
back.
gifted it to the rest of us.
But the fact seems to be, for sure, and Colin Barr seems to have done it in 1982.
And we've got the receipts on the table.
That it was far earlier than that, and it was across the country. You know, as in it was in Scotland.
Man, I love this.
But you know what? I'll hats off to the guys because
I
as a DJ,
I think we're going to have Trevor Fung on.
Oh, you're going to have Trevor on,
yeah.
right? So I'm playing with him actually very soon in Edinburgh.
He's playing here. He's playing here.
Might be the same weekend.
Yeah, might be.
So hats off to the guys because if someone says, oh, you know, DJs have to self-promote. People say to me, "You were the first house DJ in Scotland," and I go, "Yeah, I was, but I wasn't." There was Bob Jeffries and other people were playing it, but as a DJ, anything anybody says that's complimentary, it's good for you.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
So these guys invented this story, and fair play to them.
Yeah.
But as I said, all they have to do is get the bus up to Scotland.
I think it was their story, you know, but there's what's clear with these interviews is there's many other stories, you know.
Well, this is the thing. Scotland never gets any props. I mean, that Hoochie Coochie Club was doing it at the same time as Spectrum.
Yeah.
Probably doing it as well, if not better.
Yeah.
And it gets no mention. No book ever mentions the Hoochie Coochie.
So on that then, Yogi, so let's talk about Acid. You know what I mean? Acid. When Acid Tracks was released by Future, came over. Now, there was no doubt when that record was heard, that was something different. So, I mean, what was the experience of clubbing back then, and how did that record, you know, and records like that, the crowds react to it?
Well, again, it was all very, very organic for me. There I am playing house music, you know, all the new house stuff, Mike Dunn, stuff like that. And then you'd hear a little squelch. And you more than anybody will get this, right? Because Acid has something to it.
Certainly does.
That no other music has. No. And it doesn't matter how many times you hear that squelch.
Yeah.
It still makes you go, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm digging that.
Yeah.
He just played in different notes and different sequences, but
Yeah,
it's still
it's otherworldly. I mean,
it is, yeah.
and the sound has carried through. You know, I mean, it's still new records are getting released, but back then it was revolutionary.
It was revolutionary because you were like, how did they do that? How did they make that noise?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was, again, just ordering my stuff I was buying my stuff still from Manchester and having it sent up from Kev Edwards.
Where were you buying from then?
Hot Wax in Warrington,
Yeah.
Kev Edwards,
Yeah.
people like that. FOP, actually, when FOP opened, they used to stick so many records aside for it, things like Lil Louie and French Kiss and all that, and all the acid stuff. And I don't think anybody else wanted it. Do you know what I mean? I was buying it by the bucket load.
Yeah.
So,
And what did you see it as? I mean, like, what was your thoughts on it back then? Because things were changing rapidly.
do you know what? Nick, as a DJ, I don't give a shit whether people like what I play or not.
Yeah.
And I said this to you on the phone the other night. Ricky McGowan told me I was out of touch because I wouldn't play the Happy Mondays, the Stone Roses, all that crap, that hangover, that guitar, it's guitar music to me.
Yeah.
And he didn't book me for ages because obviously I was out of touch. I was off playing acid house.
Yeah.
And D-Jack's records and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, from Holland.
And all the London stuff that Pete Tong was putting out, all the acid and No Way Back and all that.
Yeah.
So I just play what I want to play. And as I said, I don't consider myself a DJ. If people like what I play, that's great.
A DJ is DJ.
I wouldn't say that, but I just play what I like.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful, even to this day at MFSB, people come to hear me play my records.
Yeah.
It's like they're sitting in my living room and I'm going, listen to this.
Yeah.
It's like a back to mine every weekend at MFSB, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the way I've always treated my DJing.
Yeah.
I've played records that weren't not necessarily didn't sound like what was happening at that time, but then they become classics.
But I mean, this is from my memories. You know, when this is going when the raves really started to happen, and you know, the big ones at Air Pavilion and
the Mucky Duck
and such like. Yeah, there was a hand in it as well from us. But I mean. I mean, it's starting. I mean, I can remember it starting to go into, you know, like the RNS stuff. You know, things getting harder. And I remember you playing tracks. You know, DJing at that time.
Well, I touched on this on the phone the other night. This is where things started to go tits up because it started as a pure. All those people over at the tunnel in America that were into proper house music. Then it landed here, and it's all these people were parachuted in, like we said.
Yeah.
And then it started to get distorted.
Yeah.
Musically, Hit House Records from Holland.
Yeah.
Kind of had techno bass lines, but you're like, oh, it's a bit RNS. RNS was a great label.
Very good. Yeah.
They brought some amazing stuff out. But then you started hearing stuff that you're like, oh, it's a bit white. It's a bit hard.
I mean, there started to be definitely a split. Really, maybe about sort of 91 into 92, where they sort of it was called, was it garage? Yeah, it was more garage. That was the word that was used at the time. But really, that was like a kind of all-encompassing thing for vocally house and such like. But then the harder tracks started going the other way. Now the raves, they were all getting played at the raves, you know.
Exactly.
But I mean, for me, I kind of lost interest about that. Certainly by 92, I lost interest, and that's the when the raves were as big as that.
Well, yeah, that's how we ended up with the Hacienda in Glasgow.
Yeah.
I brought one of the flyers. I played at one of them. What was the big thing out at the airport there?
The Prestwick Airport one.
No, Edinburgh. The massive. It's gone out of my head.
But the thing that Dave done, Slam.
No.
Oh, you'd know it if I...
Oh, yeah, like Resurrection, yeah.
Resurrections, yeah.
Resurrection. So
I'd went to London and I came back, Resurrection had started. I was like, what the fuck's happened here?
it went off in that direction.
Yeah, so it
And
went a lot harder.
we ended up-
And this was a second wave coming in, which you're talking about
Yeah,
as well, you know,
yeah.
which was maybe like, you know, it was a few years younger sort of thing, you know.
And all those people that are into bouncy techno still call it techno. You and I don't recognise it as
No,
techno.
I wouldn't
When
say.
the chav drives past with his exhaust like that at the back, playing
Yeah,
100 mile an hour,
yeah.
he'd call that techno.
Yeah.
But by then it had gone, the
Yeah.
techno.
Yeah,
Thankfully, people like Jeff Mills and that are still keeping
absolutely.
the flag flying.
And there was this kind of second wave of Detroit artists as well,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, there was, yeah.
So this is the start of the 90s then?
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
so-
sort of maybe going sort of 92, 93, sort of coming into...
I mean, it just got harder and faster. Things like acid.
Well,
I mean, I
well,
played
that
acid
sounds
rock.
like that's what's happened in the last couple of years also, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, especially with, you know, like kind of hard techno and stuff like that,
Well,
you know?
that
Absolutely.
Very similar.
you see all the clips on YouTube, and they're all playing what sounds like Scottish gabba techno to
Yeah,
me.
but I mean, it sped up then as well. I mean, one of the things that has to be said is dance music and all types of music do go in waves,
Aye.
you know, so they speed up and then it'll
Slow
drop
down
back
again.
again because there's nowhere to go, you know, so it slows down again. So I would imagine we're going to see it slowing down
Have
again.
you seen the Horse Girl?
No.
Do you know of the Horse
No.
Girl? You've
Yeah,
got to check
yeah.
She wears a horse's head.
Oh,
when she
I
did
do,
it.
yes.
And I'm
Ju-
like, that's
ju-
like what they were playing in Scotland 25 years
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
I Hate Models. Have you heard him?
I have.
He's
yeah,
the same.
Yeah.
Sarah Landra.
Yeah.
It's all banging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like it's gone back 30 years. Back
Well,
to,
that's interesting though because like they do say like, you know, younger generations do look back to a certain period before
absolutely.
them, and it's no surprise that there's so many things of referencing back the like stuff from the 90s.
Yeah.
It just so happens that you were there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's why you kind of have that, you know, like have that feeling towards it.
It's funny just to see, you know, because I certainly...
Film cameras
you know,
and whatnot are really
Yeah,
popular
yeah.
right now. You know, you know,
If you're old enough, you know, like to watch the dance
it
music...
come first and then
and
come
then-
again.
And you see it just going the exact same way. It's funny, but it's 25, 30 years later,
yeah,
you know?
yeah.
Do you know what really interests me about house music? The fact that I can go into my record collection and pull a 30-year-old house record off the shelf, put it on at a club, and nobody knows
No,
that
it's
it's
quite amazing
30
that.
years old.
Yeah, 100%.
It's
100%.
mental. And
Yeah.
I'm like, if I did that when my mum and dad were around, if I'd went off and pulled a Frank Sinatra record
You would
off,
know. You would know it's
you
30
would
years
know.
old.
It's quite incredible. I mean, certainly, you know, especially the production on New York house records in the 90s was phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, and they sit in to any set now, you know.
They do.
Yeah.
I mean, some of those Strictly Rhythm records, I mean,
Exactly.
they're still getting played
Absolutely.
as bog standard
Yeah.
club tracks
Yeah.
today.
So to kind of, I feel like we've now broken into the 90s, right? So we're not going back to the 80s now, right?
No.
We've done the 80s, right? We're moving into the 90s. Yogi, tell us then, tell us more about what you were doing in Edinburgh. What was the scene like in the 90s? Because obviously you did mention in a previous conversation that once ecstasy kicked in, you know, the kind of casuals and that kind of
Yeah.
changed in terms of their attitude. But tell us about your nights you were doing, and who were you bringing? First people to play in Scotland for the first time. The people that you brought to Scotland for the first time. Can you go into a bit of that detail?
I was given my first ecstasy in a pub on the top of the mound in Edinburgh, which is now called The Wash, I think, or something like that. And I was given it by someone from London who owned a very famous record shop, but I won't mention where. So that was I was like, what the fuck's this? Oh, it's ecstasy. I brought it back from Ibiza. I was like, right, cool. And at that time, obviously, it was still all very fresh and new. But I was playing all over the place. I mean, like literally Air Pavilion.
Yeah.
I was doing 3 gigs a day
Yeah.
on a Saturday. I was playing I was up in Aberdeen at Joy. playing in cow sheds, playing in a scout hut in where's the mental hospital?
Carstairs.
The stairs. There was a guy, Billy.
Yeah.
Now, it's funny because...
I didn't know there was raves there.
Yeah, there was raves there. Because what happened was all the gangsters got into it. They all saw a coin.
Yeah.
And the guy who ran the rave in Carstairs was the local ticket.
Yeah.
Nicer guy you couldn't meet. Everyone was like, oh, you're not playing for Billy, are you? I was like, yeah. Anyway, it was lovely. Treated me really well. Fistful of pills when I walked in. There's some drinks. Anyway, I was playing in all kinds of funny little places like that. What was the guy?
You never finished your ecstasy story. What happened?
Oh, I just took it.
But what year was that?
Once you take an ecstasy, that's it. You know the story.
What year
Where
did
can I get more?
what year was that?
This must have been about 87 or something like
Yeah.
that. 88.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
did just tell me when that wave hit, right? Did it change a lot of how the music was played?
Well, here we go
And how
back
it was
to the
produced?
casual thing again.
Yeah.
Ecstasy changed everything.
Right.
The police don't realise it, but it was the best friend they ever had.
Yeah.
And that's when the gang thing really broke down.
Yeah.
The football terrorist thing.
Which I had to, because things were pretty bad. You know?
So all these guys, because when I was growing up, you never mentioned drugs. You never spoke about drugs. Now, 10 minutes into going into a new job, you're like, did you take coke? Yeah, I could get you some really good coke. It's like that now.
Yeah.
You never mention you took drugs back in the day.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of the people that parachuted in the scene early doors were like that. They still had that old druggies, as they called us. Do you know what I mean? But once that barrier was broken down, there was no holding it back.
Yeah.
It was literally
Changed everything.
snowballing, if you excuse the pun.
Yeah.
And can you see, for somebody who was actually there on the ground, can you just kind of maybe tell us with some first-hand experience about what Edinburgh was like then? Because obviously it's well documented what Edinburgh was like in the 90s. Can you kind of, as somebody who was there...
Edinburgh was still very tippy-toe. I opened a club with another guy called Fuse. It was the Carlton Studios, actually, and we ran a night called Fuse there. That was wrecked by...
This place?
The Carlton Studios. I've got the poster there for the Fuse night, which was very, very different. We did a really intricate ticket for the opening night. These all-nighters, funnily enough, we used to do a fruit bar. I was telling you the other night.
Oh yeah, tell us. Can you make sure you don't make sure you tell us about the fruit bar?
So at the all-nighters, there was no alcohol, obviously, a lot of the time. So and people didn't want to drink water and Coke all night. So we used to have this guy, Tom, who did amazing. He'd bring like a barrow and do beautiful. Gay guy, so you can imagine.
Yeah.
Fruits looking like fruity. Everything. How do you make an orange look so good? So Tom was very flamboyant. Anyway, one night we had I think we had some guys. It might have been Nightmares on Wax, and there was people. They brought some guys up to spray the walls.
Yeah.
I thought, we've got this club. It's a white wash wall. Let's get it sprayed.
Yeah.
It was only a teenage Goldie doing the spraying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was. So, do you know about the Bankses in the
Arches?
The Arches?
I saw them. I mean, I mean, there was a couple of them, weren't there?
They're still there.
Yeah.
I think they're protected or something.
Yeah.
Before we move on, see the story you told me the other night about the fruit. Well, what was you told me a really funny story about something happened with all the fruit ones, or there was like he did this kind of big sculpture.
Oh, I don't remember. But Tom used to just sculpture all the fruit. That's what I'm saying. It ended up. It'd have melons that looked like complete pieces of art.
Yeah.
They're too good to eat.
Yeah.
But we just give the fruit away to keep people...
So how often was that? Because this was the all-nighters. I mean, this is how clubbing was most of it was based on all-nighters.
They were everywhere.
Yeah.
When I was going through my flyers, I was astounded at where some of these were. Kirkintilloch, bloody the arse ends of Scotland that were having all-nighters.
Can I just get something right here? Right, see the all-nighters, right? How was it all-nighters at this period, but Glasgow was cutting down to like finishing at like... Did Glasgow not...
That came after this.
That came after?
Glasgow. I mean, it was just. I think just really just it was down to the council at the time.
Right. Okay.
The council were more lax. And the thing about this as well is these clubs that we're talking about. You know, like there was a big crowds for Glasgow went out to these clubs. You know, because a lot in the city. There weren't all-nighters,
but I just can't imagine. I mean, there isn't all-nighters anymore anywhere.
No.
Right.
It's weird.
So how come we've went from having all-nighters in the 90s to fucking...
Well...
to all-dayers now?
The thing is, us lot have all got older, right? But
you still want to stay out?
I'd stay out all night. If there was an all-nighter, I'd go.
I'd give it a go.
Till 2 o'clock.
But that's the thing. Most folk don't seem.
But the young
up
team,
for, no one seems up for doing an all nighter.
Yeah, the young team haven't picked it up at all.
It was. I mean, I couldn't have thought about not staying up all night then. I mean, everybody did.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. But
drugs were better.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like an all day and then go up the road.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the older crowd, yeah.
For the older crowd.
I mean, I started MFSB 13 and a half years ago, daytime club. And you've seen how that has exploded all over the country now.
Absolutely.
I mean, I saw a wee gap in the market.
Yeah.
I was like, right, there's no all-nighters. People, all my mates are like that by 1 o'clock. I need to go home. And I was like, so why not do a little daytime thing? People thought I was mad.
It's very clever because you finish it at 10 o'clock.
9, 10.
And it gives basically the chance for people, because people coming in the train and such like, so all the trains.
It's just
we have people come from all over the place.
It just seems interesting that you put out a generation, right? Trailblazed in the 90s and they want to stay out all night back then and they still want to stay out now, but they need to do it during the day, right?
What are young people doing now?
And you're still doing it. See, some of the best crowds you have right now is the crowds which are, come out for the kind of street rave stuff, or I mean, we had Mr. Scruff playing in the club a couple of months ago, and every single person on that dance floor at 7 p.m. knew exactly why they were standing on that dance floor. Do you know what I mean? It was like serious business they knew why they were there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's just kind of...
I think it's just, I think dance music in the last few years has been at a low, I mean, it has been, there's no doubt, because guitar stuff's taken over for the younger generation.
Oh, is it?
But absolutely. But it's definitely coming back.
But it just seems like the music has quite a deep connection. It's like when I do lights for the street rave Christmas night in the subway, right? I watch the dance floor and everyone is singing the songs.
Yeah.
And they know the songs and they know them back to front,
Yeah.
It's just interesting to kind of...
I find that quite interesting because my perception was that there are no classic tracks these days. Not like when we were going clubbing.
No, it's not. No. I'm talking about the singing tracks from
back then.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. I could say you name 10 house records and you go, bish, bash, bosh. And if I said to you, name 10 quality house tracks now...
Yeah.
You'd struggle, I think, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's got, when this was at its peak, right, and I mean, you could say, sort of 1990, 91, right? So that, I mean, when you were hearing these tracks for the very first time, and I'm talking about like tracks like, LFO, Homeboy, Hippie, A Funky Dread, Total Confusion, what other? I mean, just. It was just
Can you relate, Minx?
Like Energy Flash, Joey Beltram. Oh. Now, these tracks all get played now, and people know them when they come in.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, like, they were brand new then, and it was just like one after the next of these tracks that would go on to become future classics.
I think the thing is also back then that if you wanted to hear this music, if you were a punter or whatnot, if you didn't buy the record, you had to go out and listen to you play the record.
Yeah. And that had to be a real effort because, I mean, in order for us to go and see, certainly we're at a stage, we had to go by bus, do you know what I mean? Bus loads. loads of us to travel, and there was a camaraderie within, because it was all your friends and that. Everybody there would be a lot of yous all together out for the full night, you know, and you were hearing these tracks, you know, that were totally revolutionary and still, you know, to this day are classic tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, like the first time you ever hear Voodoo Ray,
Wow, yeah.
you're just like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
I remember my mate from Bradford, Chris Thomas, ringing me up and going, wait till you hear this. You need to go and get it. What is it? Oh, Voodoo Ray by a guy called Gerald. He's called Gerald? No, a guy called Gerald. Right, okay. Next day I'm in the record shop. Have you got this Voodoo Ray? A guy called Joe. Just come in now, yeah. And you're like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Do you think they thought it's harder for? I mean, obviously there's more music getting made than ever, probably, right? But do you think it's hard? But because all that was so fresh, because it was so different to what you'd heard before, right? Do you think it's kind of because there's a good 30, 40 years now on from tracks like that getting made?
Well, you'll remember 23rd Precinct in its heyday.
Yep.
And going to shops in Manchester and London.
I mean, record shops themselves were exciting then. Going into record shops then. I remember 23rd Precinct had a strobe in it. So they dropped all the lights, and I remember
Saturday afternoon kind of thing.
Energy Fast getting played first, and they dropped, and it was Michael Kilkie that played it.
Yeah.
They dropped the lights and put the strobe on, and people were like going wild trying to get a copy of this, you know?
You'll read interviews with well-known DJs, and quite a lot of them say the same thing. They say, I remember going in the record shop and being shit scared because there was Mickey Finn, there was Paul Trouble Anderson, and I was just standing in the background. And the shop would be packed, and you didn't want to pick a shit record. Do you know what I mean? You'd be like...
In case somebody would looked at you.
You're like, oh, I like that. I'll take that. And everyone, yeah, give me one as well. Give me one. And you're like, yeah. So you got the nod. But it was Saturday in the record shop was a big day.
Yeah, big day, man. Yeah.
Yogi, do you want to tell us more about some of the people that you booked in the 90s? Because you mentioned Roger Sanchez to me before. You mentioned Carl Cox. I mean, did you not say who was...
Oh, Nelson Rosado, Mike Delgado, Galliano.
Yeah.
I've put everyone on.
Yeah.
Sanchez, Victor Simonelli. I've played with
everyone.
And Trouble Anderson, Bob Jones.
Yeah.
It goes on, and Simon Dunmore.
And were you starting to play, obviously, across the country, you know, in Europe and whatnot? What would to tell us the gigs you were getting?
The funny thing, just going back to that initial question about DJs, is the funny thing was there was a point where no Americans played over here.
Yeah, I remember that.
You look at the old Southports, and there's not one American DJ. It's all great British DJs. Good, but I think British DJs are much better than American, if I'm honest. They have more knowledge musically than the Americans. You sit an American there, a big American DJ, and you can lose them in 30 seconds. The minute you start talking about jazz, funk, and northern soul, they're like, what? They don't have a clue, you know what I mean? We seem to have a much more in-depth knowledge of the music.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was booking everybody. Norman J. God.
And see a lot of these DJs, the money thing hadn't kicked into the scene, yeah.
No.
I mean, it was all. I mean, this seems like all very. I mean, this seems like all very kind of like let's just split it all between us all, you know. It's all something.
You may as well tell us how much was Roger Sanchez playing for back then.
Oh God, Roger! Do you know what? When I put Roger on, that was New Year's Day. He was still quite... this was the start. It was the Americans that really started the money thing, I think, because they're obsessed with money, Americans. Yeah. They're not obsessed... We were all obsessed with the music, and when they came here, I think they thought, right, take your trousers down, guys.
Yeah.
But this is the whole thing that I hate about the club scene is people worship big-name DJs.
Yeah.
And I've heard young guys... play the heart out, who are 10 times better than I mean, Felix the Housecat's one of the worst DJs. I went to see him play, and he just played classic after classic after classic. I was like, why are you paying him $2,000 to play records I wouldn't even take out?
Yeah.
I'd take one of them out to fit in the set. Do you know what I mean?
I like Felix Housecat, but
Well,
I've
the
had a
night
few nights with him, and
The
I
night
thought
I
they were
heard
good.
him, I walked out because I
Right.
was just like, that was so shit. There's only three. Well, another legendary DJ was awful as well, who's right up there. He did the same. He just played classic after classic. But I hate this whole worshipping DJs thing.
Yeah.
I think
When did that start to come about then?
when the Americans came,
Yeah.
they were exotic. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
They
There was a mystique about them
they
because they
from
were.
a foreign
They weren't
country.
from Sheffield.
Yeah, they weren't from Sheffield. Yeah, they didn't talk like that, mate. So, do you not agree? It
I
was
do, actually,
When the
yeah.
Americans came, it was all
And
like,
that is when the fees started to go.
Yeah.
You know, that was the first ones that were getting £2,000-3,000 for a gig, which
Yeah.
was a lot of money back then,
Yeah.
you know.
And this was not in the 90s, sure.
This was the 90s,
In the
early
90s, yeah.
90s, yeah.
So folk were
I just don't understand why people are, you know, Beyonce could walk past me in the street and I wouldn't bat an eyelid, whereas someone else had been licking her arse out. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? I just don't get that.
That's one thing I find too is like the way people dance in nightclubs now, right? Like for example, I was doing the lights last night,
Yeah.
and I stood at one of the points where people's like everyone's directing their view to the DJ booth, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's a really shit view. See, because I do lights, I'm looking the opposite direction and looking at the lights. I'm like, people should be fucking like looking at the lights, do you know what I mean? And seeing that stuff instead of, because like when you're looking towards the DJ booth, it's very, very boring. There's nothing going on.
Talking of what direction people stand in, remember when we all used to hide in corners and look at the walls?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
now everyone's like got the phone out looking at DJs
Yeah.
and
But
stuff.
there's nothing to.
I remember
There's nothing
to look at.
Yeah.
I remember the pavilion was, but I mean, I suppose that was the way it was set out, but because it was a big kind of hall, I mean, remember everybody faced forward there.
Do you think so? I
I'm
thought
sure
they,
they did.
a lot of the time they were just facing the other side of the dance
I don't know.
floor.
It's a long time ago.
I think a lot of people did look at you're right, a lot of
Yeah.
people did. But I remember people just kind of looking across the dance floor as well.
Aye.
I think also it depends on the kind of music. I mean, we had awesome tapes from Africa playing right the other week, and because of the music that he plays, right, everyone was in wee groups, all facing each other and not
Yeah.
really facing him.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And like, so I kind of noticed that the other week, but yeah,
Hopefully that comes back.
yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
presume it's the kind of music that.
Well, do you know, it's funny because that whole black culture, when I started off, there was a lot of pride in your dancing. And, they all started dance
Absolutely.
troupes like Jazz Defectors
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And they were very proud of the moves and
Yeah.
dancing. And it wasn't the kind of thing you would do facing the DJ.
No.
It was interacting with
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah, and there's something to be said, just from reading about the hacienda with the switch with acid house, is a lot of the black crowd left as it busied up because they couldn't dance properly.
Well, I said to you on the phone the other night about the Hacienda.
Yeah.
I was going to much better clubs than the Hacienda. People say to me, "Oh, you're from Manchester, you must have gone to the Hacienda." I went,
Well, that's
yeah.
what I just did. Aye.
Yeah. I went a few times. So what?
tell us about that then. Where would have been the clubs then that you would have
Well,
thought?
there was Legend. Well, they're all on that bloody
Legends,
flyer there.
yeah.
Legends, Rafters.
Yeah.
Rafters was amazing on
Yeah.
Oxford Street.
Yeah.
The Ritz, the Reno. I mean, there was some very, very black clubs in Manchester, obviously.
We've got John De Silva coming up, I think, so
Right.
we're going to get another sort of slant on it from
Yeah.
Manchester.
Yeah. Well, I think John was involved in that trendy, what's that?
Revolution 12 Hour Madness, right? And it says recreational areas. I mean, what's
Well, that's
that?
in the plaza, so I mean that's Govan Hill. So there we go, the plaza. Govan Hill raves.
Unbelievable.
Yogi, can you tell us about any stories, any sketchy stuff happened in the 90s? Any things any highlights that you can tell
it's
us?
funny, I was thinking, what shall I say? I can't really talk about that.
Right.
I can't talk about that. Oh, I could talk about that. I can maybe talk about that. So I'm coming home from Air Pavilion one day, and I think we were going to an all-nighter somewhere.
Using
maybe.
your all-nighters, man.
And I'd just bought this Mercedes. I think it was the first car I ever owned. And I think I was off my tights. Anyway, the car ended up in a fucking cow field, did it not?
Really?
Cows bucking. This is like 1 o'clock in the morning. Cows bucking everywhere, and had to go and knock on the farmer's door because I was off my tights. And I was like, got to get that car out of there before the police come. Anyway, a guy called Motion, who was a Hibs casual, funnily enough, he ended up giving the farmer, we had to pay him 100 quid or something to get it out of the field in the middle of the night before the police came. And honestly, it was ready to blow and everything, the smell coming off it.
That reminds me.
Fucked the side of the car. Absolutely fucked it.
That reminds me, can you tell us, right, about where you stayed in Edinburgh and what was going on? Because you told me the other night about your living situation in Edinburgh.
Well, I was living just down from the City Cafe, actually, the first house I bought. Oh, no, you're talking about...
Yeah.
Right, so, yeah. So I used to stay in a place called Wardyburn, which is a really rough area in Edinburgh. And I was staying with a guy, he got done with the biggest LSD bust in Scotland. But he was also into dogfight, which I'm not into. But there was loads of
Lovely fella, I'm sure.
Yeah, loads of staffies running around on the trestles, training them and everything. I mean, it went against everything But you get up in the morning and there'd be 30 people sat around. He had no furniture, sitting around waiting to be served up all the cannabis and LSD and amphetamine sulfate as it was back then. But he ended up in a big gang war with someone who got shot not that long ago in Edinburgh, actually. But yeah, it was just mayhem. But no, I actually, funnily enough, first house I bought was just down from the City Cafe, which was a legendary, groundbreaking. It's probably the first style venue in Scotland.
Yeah.
Designed partly by Ben Kelly, Sampi Argentini from the Sub Club and the Hooch. He was the guy who put it all together. But I used to have Steve Strange. I've got a flyer there.
Really?
I played at Steve Strange's 30th.
Wow.
He used to come around my house. We used to get high together.
Brilliant.
Because he was hanging around Edinburgh a lot.
Yeah.
Back then.
Why? Just...
I think he was trying to get away from drugs, and then he knocked on my door.
So he was obviously from London.
So when did that spin?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
This is the 80s.
Yeah, he's from the north of England.
North of England, but he was kind of. He was obviously
he started Blitz.
Right, Blitz.
The whole.
In Camden.
I think
Camden
it moved
Palace.
about the Blitz.
Blitz, I thought was possible. Was it not in the West End?
Right. Okay.
But I mean, that would have been the New Romantic Club.
Yeah, New Romantic
And
stuff.
he tried to get away from it all from in London, and he arrived in Edinburgh in the mid '80s, and
I think his head was bursting, to be honest. And he was always in the City Cafe. I got to know him, and we'd go down to my house and take some whiz and stuff. And then he's like, "Do you want to DJ at my 30th?" I was like, "Aye, okay." So the flyer's over there. I've got the receipt.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So yeah, I think Steve was a troubled soul by that time. You know, I mean, think about what he was doing. He was out probably 5 nights a week as well in London.
Absolutely.
Taking loads of amphetamines and stuff. So.
Making some amazing music as well, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, he was into electronic music, wasn't he?
Yeah,
He actually went to Wigan Casino as well.
Did he, aye?
He used to go to Wigan, yeah. So...
Everything seems to come round in circles there.
It does come round in circles, yeah.
Yogi, so we've brought out a lot of your flyers from your archive. Do you mind just going through some of these? Because I'm sure a lot of our viewers and people watching the podcast, a lot of these flyers will bring back happy and hazy memories.
Yeah. Well, I like with my records, I used to... Well, I still pick up the odd flyer. I collected all the flyers anywhere I played, and if I was somewhere and people had put the flyers out, I'd pick them up. So I've literally got thousands of flyers at home. I mean, they're just everywhere. So, I mean, this one here, I think Nick just said, that's the first ever street rave.
At Air Pavilion.
Stuart and Order were on that.
Yep. Slam playing.
Here's a club we didn't mention. Fury Murray's.
Yeah, for sure.
He was a
Acid
nice
House
guy
Club.
that owned that.
Yeah.
And Shagan again. I'm not.
I love
That's
this
nice.
one.
This-
I love
We've
this
got
one.
to talk about this one.
Look at this.
Who is that? Who's that man there?
He's not changed much. But I think what we've got to point out here is this is on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So still raving on Christmas Day.
that is pretty damn mental going out on Christmas Day. Yeah, so
I mean, what a pair. What a pair. This has to be recreated again, by the way, Yogi. We
you
need
can
to do
keep
this.
that, by the way.
Oh, no, don't say that.
No, you can, because I've got a few of them. So, and if Nick wants one, he can have one as well. So here's a Galliano at the Hat and Rig.
Oh, thank you so much, Yogi.
Yeah,
So I mean that's there's something to be said about that, Yogi, because this is when Acid House really was. This is 1980. No,
Well,
that's
there it is.
1991.
It
So
said
it is.
rap
Yeah,
there, look.
yeah.
but House, I mean, it says House. Utah Saints. It's this is when the big parties started to come in.
So that was Technodrome, which was down in
Technodrome.
Ayrshire. So that was the first.
Look at the font. What does it say they're vinyl deck technicians?
Yeah, that's what they call it.
Production. A genuine 80k sub-bass system.
80.
I don't know if there was as much as that there,
So,
but
so you're literally putting on, because you didn't have social media or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
You're putting on in a big flyer, lasers, hot air balloons. I mean, three-dimensional cinema, chill out area, fairy lights, golden scans. You're putting on the flyer all the technical stuff that you're doing.
Yeah,
at
and
it.
whistles and caps.
Which were big back then.
That was big back then. Yeah, that
Yeah.
must have pulled people in.
I mean, look at the font in this one. Technodrome. Very techno-noir. The techno-noir? Oh, the ultimate dance experience, and you turn it around and it tells you exactly what stilt walkers, fire eaters. I mean, this has got everything going on at this Technodrome.
That was a huge rave. I mean, you can actually find that on YouTube.
Oh, can you?
It's on YouTube. I mean, I remember, I mean, this is going back 25 years ago, but I bet they got one of the guys that ran that, and they didn't have any money, and they basically managed to put all that on.
With no money?
With no money whatsoever.
No drugs, no thugs, no mugs.
Don't know if it turned out that way.
No, that was an open invite to all that lot of things. So
I love this one too, this going underground, where it's in obviously...
that was in the list.
On the list.
Yeah.
And it's obviously taking inspiration from the London subway map, and it tells you all the key locations in Glasgow and Edinburgh. You've got the Tunnel, Volcano, Choice, Fury Murray's, Sub Club, Timpanelli, Soma, the Archie Sub Club mentioned that, you know, and then you've got Edinburgh, you've got the Venue, Planet Studio, Citrus Club, Honey.
There's a good bit to read out about the sub club.
Yeah,
there,
I'll read this
Soban.
one out actually. So the sub club, originally in the name of a Friday night at Lucifer's, Glasgow, with Sam Piancentini, Peter McKernan, Nick Peacock, and Ewan Dale. The venue on Jamaica Street was renamed Sub Club in 1987.
Right, okay.
With a lineup
Glad we
including
got that out of the way.
Yeah.
with a lineup including Harry, Yogi Haughton, and Segan. In 1990, Harry and Slam started Atlantis. The sub club has consistently remained Glasgow's premier house venue. Joy, Red Cell, Aqua Planet, Tangent, Pure, Cool Lemon, and Subculture are just a few of the hugely popular nights it has hosted. Last year's Subculture CD, mixed by residents DJ Harry, was a a big hit, and another is planned for this autumn. And it goes on to describe other venues.
What year's that flyer from?
1998, June 1998.
Amazing.
Yeah, as I was saying as well, don't forget Graham Wilson and Greg, who used to run the sub club with Graham, Greg McLeod. When they had did they have a fallout? Or I know Graham went off on his own and he started a club called the Champion, which was literally round the back, the street parallel to Jamaica Street.
Yeah.
So, and that I think it had a moving dance floor in it and everything. I don't know what that is now, but that never really took off for Graham, the Champion. So
This as well. So the Kilt. So that was out in New Mains.
every little satellite town.
And that was a major club through the Kilt. The Kilt ran for years. And also, it's worth talking about Allerton, which is just between New Mains and Shotts, which was really the mecca for Northern Soul fans.
Well, that's regarded as one of the best Northern Soul clubs of all time. For 60s newies, groundbreaking club, you know.
And the Miners Club. Miners Club.
Yeah. Miners Club. Funnily enough, I used to go at the all-nighter after I'd been at the sub club.
Yep.
They used to call me Housemaster Haughton at Allenton.
I went to a couple of them when we all turned up the bus.
Because they were all so anti-house, do you know what I mean?
It was in the second room. There was a second room.
It was like a gym, wasn't it?
Aye, and there was a second room. I remember that.
No doorman.
You were no.
We all sell. It was all self.
And it was bring your own alcohol.
Yeah.
And the buses turned up. I can't remember where we'd been, but you were playing. And there was Northern Soul, talcum powder, and then we all piled up. And we were significantly younger.
Yeah.
And filled up the second room, which was sort of house, sort of playing at the time. That must have been maybe 1990 or something like that.
Yeah.
There's a real honesty before this stuff.
Yeah.
Everything's very kind of sound.
Well, you can touch it all.
Everyone's the way it's written. Everything's very sound. Everyone's like just kind of be sound and have a good time.
I mean, it was coming out of very dark times, you know.
It's
Thatcher.
all very mystical.
But it was
Tayside, where's Tayside? Dundee, innit?
You know, everything. I mean, the country, you know, had been through Thatcher. There was a lot of employment, you know, and this was properly an escape, and it was completely different. Everything turned to Technicolor. You know, before then it seemed kind of grey.
Well,
you know.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the Northern Soul scene thrived on. It was all working class people, kind of miners, they graft all week, and then Saturday night, they just pure escapism, you know.
And something to be said about Northern Soul, which was absolutely the blueprint for the raves and scene that followed, you know.
Yeah.
You know, with high tempo music, you know, black music, you know.
Yeah, no, it was absolutely the blueprint, you know, the drugs, the staying up all night.
Yeah. So we're looking at this one, Yogi, if ever you can see that, which was in Edinburgh sub club.
Yeah, that's a weird one, isn't it?
So, but that would be Nick Peacock, and obviously in the jazz room, Hugh and Cry. Texas.
That's me, Martin. That's pre-Yogi.
Oh, before you were called. So when did you get the name Yogi then?
When I started at the Hooch Coochie, because Alan Campbell just started calling me Yogi after Yogi Haughton, the drummer.
I remember you used to start sets with
the Yogi record.
Yogi the Bear,
Yeah,
you know, the Warner
record.
Brothers.
Yeah. So, that's Alan Campbell, who I was just Martin when I first came up here.
Yeah.
I always wanted a nickname.
Yeah, you got a good one. You got a good one.
I did, yeah. So, but yeah, that's a weird gig, that one.
Yogi, look, I think thank you so much, okay, for everything and telling us your whole, you know, your story and about everything you've been involved in.
There's lots more.
There's lots more. It's definitely enough for a part two. And look, thank you so much for bringing this incredible, you know, archive.
But it's just, you start to remember these things that you completely forgot about.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And a lot of these people are not around anymore.
Yeah.
We've lost so many people
Yeah.
through different things.
Yeah,
Just,
I mean, I think that's one of the things that's important, because the scene's been documented in different parts, but getting the people on that were there at the start and carried it through and are still here is what it's about.
well, it upsets me as well that everyone harks back to the South and London and Manchester. And, people like Shagan and that need to be remembered.
Yeah.
He's still alive, but these names just get forgotten about.
Yeah.
It's such a shame because he was pivotal as well in building the scene.
As were you.
Thank you.
Is there any, before we finish off, Yogi, is anything, any words you would like to give people who are, getting into music and getting into the club scene? Anything that you would, like, in your experience that you would kind of like to pass on?
I would just say always keep your ears open musically. You don't follow the crowd, just be into what you're into and stop worshipping big name DJs. Do you know what I mean? There's so many great young guys and girls out there that are coming through. So, go and listen to them as well.
Yeah.
It's... you never know. We all started off as little kids playing music and and as a punter on the dance floor. Yeah. So, whereas when the Americans land, they're already big names, you know what I mean? But no, support your British DJs as well, I would say.
Fantastic.
And on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching the Glasgow Clubbing Podcast. A big round of applause to Yogi Haughton.
Thank you.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Yogi, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Yogi.
Thanks,
Good
Yogi.
man, thank you. Good stuff.